I recently made a video about tips and tricks for the iPad, and the overwhelming feedback on that video was that the iPad is a tool that most people aren't using to anywhere near its full capability because they don't know everything that it can do. So in this video, I'm going to share 8 more tips and tricks with you. Okay, let's get into it. You can use your iPad to speak news articles to you without needing to download any kind of additional app or pay for an additional service. To do this, simply open any article in Safari, and so long as you have the reader view showing in the address bar at the top of the screen, like you can see in the example here, this should work. Tap on the button, but instead of choosing Show Reader, choose Start Listening. Your iPad will begin speaking the article out to you. One slightly annoying thing about this feature is that by default, Apple has this set to a really weird sounding computer voice. You're better off setting this to one of the Siri voices as it sounds much more natural. To do this, open Settings, choose Accessibility, and tap into Spoken Content. In here, tap on Voices. Choose your language from the available system voices. For me, English is available at the top of this list, I would assume because I have my iPad set to English. You can see that mine is showing as one of the default voices, but if you tap into where it says Siri, you can choose one of the voices in here. You can press play to preview the voice, and if you need to, tap the cloud button to download the files for that particular voice. I've got mine set to English UK Voice 4. And that's it. You can return to Safari and notice that the reader button in the address bar now shows a speech bubble. This is because your iPad was in the middle of reading the article out to you. Tap here and you can either resume your listening or end listening, as well as change things like the speaking rate or rewind back or move forward. I regularly use this feature as a way of quickly listening to news articles while I'm working. If you own an Apple Pencil and you write some handwritten text, like you can see on the screen now, did you know that you can neaten it up? Tap to choose the selection tool, circle the text that you just wrote, and tap on the selected text to bring up this contextual menu. Move to the second page of options and choose Straighten. This will straighten up the text for you without changing any of your handwriting. Also tap on the same text again, but this time let's look at another option that was available to us, Copy as Text. Tap this and then paste the text, and you can see that you can use this to turn handwritten text into computer text. Although it is worth mentioning that if this is something that you like to do, you should use Scribble instead. For this, tap the markup button at the top of the screen and make sure you've got the pen with the letter A selected. This is your Scribble pen. With this enabled, you can then write on your iPad screen like you would a sheet of paper, but the stuff that you write will immediately be turned into computer text. If you make a mistake, just scribble it out. If you want to insert a space or remove a space, make a little slash in between the letters. If there isn't a space there, one will be inserted. If there is a space, this will remove it. One of the most common complaints about the iPad is that it's the only Apple computing product that doesn't include a calculator. Even the Apple Watch has one. But you can access a calculator on the iPad, well, sort of, thanks to a built-in feature of the iPad called Spotlight Search. There are a few different ways to access Spotlight Search. You can either swipe down with one finger on the screen, or if you're using a trackpad like the one built into the Magic Keyboard, you can swipe down on the trackpad with 2 fingers. Or if you're using a keyboard, like the one built into the Magic Keyboard case, press the Command and Spacebar, just like you would if you were using a Mac. Then simply begin typing out whatever you want the calculator to figure out for you. Spotlight Search will identify that you're trying to use it as a calculator and will give you the answer. Of course, one of the reasons why the writing experience is so good on the iPad is because using the Apple Pencil is a great experience, but it's made even better with Paperlike, who have partnered with me on today's video. We all know that the key to keeping your iPad screen as good as new is installing a screen protector, but what is it about the Paperlike 2.1 screen protector that makes it better than all the others? In my opinion, it's 2 things. First, it retains all the astonishing quality of your iPad display, because what good is a screen protector if it takes away any of the sharpness, clarity, and vibrancy of your iPad? Colors look just as good with the Paperlike 2.1 screen protector installed. Pictures still pop off the screen. Everything looks as good as you'd expect it to. But you also get the added bonus of nanodots technology. If this sounds like fancy technology to you, that's because it is. But ultimately what it means to you and I is that writing on your iPad using the Paperlike 2.1 screen protector feels as if you're writing on paper. So even though using the Apple Pencil on the iPad is the drawing and writing method of the future, Paperlike 2.1 makes it as familiar as jotting a note in your favorite notebook. If this sounds good to you, get your Paperlike 2.1 screen protector today by following the link in the description of this video, where you can also find cleaning accessories, folio cases, and more. Your Mac is good for getting work done, and your iPhone is good for communicating and entertainment, but I think the iPad is the most well-rounded Apple product for doing both of those things. Because of this, you might want to have your iPad set up specifically depending on what it is that you're doing. In other words, a productivity iPad and an entertainment iPad. Thankfully, you can do that using focus mode. Open settings and choose focus. For this example, I'm going to create a work focus mode, but do keep in mind that everything that we're doing here can be used to create any kind of focus mode that you like. You would simply tap the plus button in the upper right of the screen to create a custom focus mode. For this example, I'll tap on work. At the top of the screen, you have the option of silencing notifications while this focus mode is enabled, either from specific people or from specific apps. This is handy if there are people who are often breaking your attention during the day while you're trying to get work done, or if you know that you just can't be trusted to not open your favorite game. Customize screens is the area where I think focus mode is most useful. For the home screen, I'll tap on the choose button. Here, you're going to choose a page layout, although you can then customize it. Once you've chosen the page layout that you're happy with, tap on the edit button at the bottom of the screen. Your iPad will do a pretty good job of recommending relevant apps to you. In this case, it's tried to round up all of my productivity apps, but I can then scroll through the list and choose some additional ones if I wish. Once you're happy with your selection, choose Add. You can do the same for the lock screen if you wish. Further down this page, you can set a schedule for this focus mode to enable and disable. So you might want to choose Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, for example, or you can manually enable and disable this as you need to. To enable the focus mode, open Control Center, tap into the focus button and choose Work. You can choose to enable it for a set period of time, or just have it set on until you manually disable it later. Also note that if you have other devices like a Mac or iPhone all logged into the same Apple ID, the focus mode should change and reflect on all of these as well. Here's the situation I reckon we've all been in with our iPads from time to time. I've got a bunch of apps on my main home screen, but then if I swipe to the next screen, I've got a bunch of apps there as well, and I'd prefer to have them all together on one screen. I think what most people do is they will tap and hold to enter jiggle mode and then use their finger to drag each app manually from one page to the next. Here's a much easier way of doing it. Tap and hold to enter jiggle mode. Tap on one of the apps as if you're going to move it from one screen to the next, but keep your finger pressed down on the app. Then use another finger to tap on all of the other apps on this page. You can see that this creates a stack of apps under your original finger. Then once you've got all of your apps selected, use your other finger to swipe back to the original page. Then let go of the stack of apps to drop them all onto the first page. So long as you're running at least iPadOS 17, there is a feature that makes it extremely easy to complete PDF forms using your iPad. So here, for example, you can see that I've been sent a PDF for a fun run with spaces to fill in as part of the sign up. When I open the PDF in preview on my iPad, you can see that an option appears at the top of the screen that says autofill can assist with filling in this form. This is because your iPad can intelligently identify forms that can be completed, even on PDFs that have been scanned in. Tap on autofill form and your iPad will move to what it believes is the first field to be completed. However, you can override this by just tapping on one of the other fields. When I tap into the name column, for example, my iPad not only recognizes that this is a field that requires information, it also recognizes that this is a name field, and therefore it will try to input my name automatically. The same goes for email address and phone number in this particular example, but this works on lots of different types of data. Once you're happy, choose Done, and the form will be saved, complete with the information that you've just input. You can then forward this on to somebody, save it to the Files app, print it, or whatever it is that you need to do. By the way, if you prefer to have content like this in a written format, there's a PDF version of this video, complete with screenshots, and you can access it along with all other PDFs I've created, plus future ones, for just $5 a month. You can either scan the QR code that you can see on screen, or follow the link in the description of this video to learn more. If you go to Settings, then Notes, and scroll all the way to the bottom of this page, you'll see an option called Access Notes from Lock Screen. If you don't have an Apple Pencil, you would do this by accessing the Control Center and tapping the Notes button in there. If you have an Apple Pencil, however, you can do this by double tapping the lock screen of your iPad with your Apple Pencil. So notice back on the settings page that you have two options to choose from here. You can choose to either always create a new note or to resume the last note that you were working on. Which one you choose is really up to you and how you tend to take notes. I find that resuming the last note is more often than not the option that I want, And you can always tap the new note button if you like anyway. Also, notice that if you choose this option, you have some additional options. You can specify whether the last note that you're resuming should be the one that you created on the lock screen or the last note that you were working on in the Notes app in general. You can also specify whether or not a new note should automatically be created after a set period of time. One last setting to show you here on the Notes page of settings, scroll to the middle of this page and look for the Quick Notes section. You can see an option here called Corner Gestures. Tap into this and you can see that you can enable a corner swipe to access notes. I've got mine set to the right corner swipe. What this means is that at any time I can swipe up from the bottom right corner and it will create a new quick note for me. This is handy if you're using the iPad and suddenly decide that you want to make a note of something. If you're browsing Safari when you do this, you'll see that the Quick Note has an Add Link button, and tapping on that adds a link to the current Safari page to your Quick Note. If you've got an email open, it will show you a button to allow you to add a link to the email. This tip is exclusive to people who use an external keyboard like the Magic Keyboard case, but I'm including it because I think a lot of people use their iPad in this way, and this is good to know. You might find that the small form factor of iPad keyboards means that you're missing important keys, like the escape key. Thankfully, there is an easy way to get this back, although there is kind of a trade-off here. Open Settings, choose General and then Keyboard. Choose Hardware Keyboard and then choose Modifier Keys at the bottom of this page. You can see that there are 5 modifier keys on an Apple keyboard: the Caps Lock key, the Control key, the Option key, the Command key, and the Globe key. By default, these are configured to their default function. In other words, tapping the Caps Lock key will enable or disable Caps Lock. However, you can change the function of these if you wish. So for example, if you choose Caps Lock, you can see that in here you have Escape as an option. The trade-off that I mentioned is that by enabling Escape on one of these keys, you are disabling its default use. So this is going to be a case of you identifying which of these 5 keys you utilize the least and putting the Escape key there. For example, I would never put the Escape key on the Command button because I use the Command button all the time. The Globe key could be a good option if you prefer to keep Caps Lock as is. So there you go, 8 more tips and tricks for the iPad. What do you think? Anything in here that you didn't know about? Oh, and check out my previous video. There's 8 more tips and tricks for the iPad in there too. Any tips that weren't included in either video that you think should have been, drop me a comment and let me know. And as ever, if you found this video useful, do please consider leaving me a like and subscribing to my channel for more content like this in the future. See you on the next video.